Welcome. And so tonight's reading is about called Open Your Intuition. Open Your Intuition. And I was thinking last night as I was falling asleep, I wondered, I had this strange thought that what if sleep was really the main event and our waking time was secondary? I I I I'm a really big fan of sleep and our dreams. And I had a dream just a couple nights ago that I was trying to open a door, and there was someone on the other side holding me in so that I couldn't get out of the room. And I decided I remembered that I could use my superpowers, which I did, and I opened the door, and this person who was holding it kind of went running off. And then when I came out, I looked in the distance and saw that this person was watching me, and I at first I felt some fear that somehow he was I felt threatened in some way. And as he began to run toward me, I leaped in the air and started to fly. And I'm not sure how much this has to do with intuition, but I think there's a lot of some connection between this topic of opening our intuition and opening up to our unconscious, opening up to our dream lives. I've been, I think it's one of the things that I most appreciate about. I have a book project now, so I both appreciate having a book project and having a deadline, because I feel like it forces me to open my intuition to what is it that's trying to come through me in writing. It's one of the things I really appreciate about writing is this challenge and possibility of getting out of my own way and seeing what's there. So this particular chapter from Not Always So is one of the shorter ones, and it's also clearly it's a talk that he gave during a retreat, during a 7-day retreat. And he starts out by saying, right, we do not communicate with words, right? This is when we're sitting, but being with each other is still a big encouragement. When you don't speak, deeper communication between you will be encouraged. And your mind will become very subtle. So it's interesting, even in our sitting here online, noticing what kind of communication is happening between us, right? Because it's a very different experience. If we were each alone, sitting by ourselves, it feels very different. And it's like curious as to what is it about the connection and communication? What is it? How are we being supported by each other? How are we supporting each other? And I think those questions, at least that wondering that is worthwhile. And then he says, when you're involved in superficial conversations based on passing interests, your true feeling will be covered. And I have to say, I found myself like I understand what he's saying, right? That sometimes we talk in ways maybe that is covering our real feelings that could be described as superficial. But I think a lot of times our our kind of casual conversations can be very intuitive. Even Michael was describing uh, getting on a. He was telling me he got on a plane just a little while ago in San Diego on the way here, and sat next to someone and said to the woman, "Is this plane going to Portland?" And and that just opened up. Clearly, a lot was being communicated there. There was a kind of humor and connection, and then uh, they just talked. The whole plane ride up, and there's something about making an offering to someone. Even some lighthearted question that shows maybe that we care, that we have a sense of humor. Uh, so it's interesting, this idea of superficial or not superficial conversation. And I really like the next sentence in this talk where he says, let's see, do I have what I'm looking for? Yeah. So to open your innate nature and to feel something from the bottom of your heart, it is necessary to remain silent. Through this kind of practice, you will have a more intuitive understanding of the teaching. So it's interesting. I think of this practice, especially these long retreats, like he's talking about here, as a kind of dipping back into the well, right? Really prolonged period of silences and a way of right so to open your innate nature and feel something from the bottom of your heart. And to me, the one of the reasons we practice is to then, how do we bring that into our day-to-day lives, right? How do we bring from the bottom of our heart into all our relationships, even into our work relationships, into our personal relationships? I was curious about this word, innate, and why am I not seeing my notes here?
So open your innate nature.
So open your innate nature. Oh, right. So the word innate comes from the word nasi, Nasci, which is like nascent, which means something that is coming into existence. So it's interesting. And I think that's one of the things that so moves me and surprises me about my dreams, is that it's somehow getting into touch with the arising of existence, the arising of experience that's completely unplanned and out of my usual sense. And I think there's something about noticing in our meditation and noticing in our daily lives how our own experience is arising, the arising of our experience, and how quickly we create some story. And usually the story is about us, right? It's the story of me and what I'm wanting or not wanting. But I think so much of this practice is somehow, and this practice of intuition is becoming more in touch with the arising of our experience, the arising of to catch it at the point where we're having a better sense of our perception and how we go from perception to some story, create some story about it. So he goes on to say, just sit, Just sit, see what happens. And then he goes on to say, following the rules lets you find yourself. The rules are not something to restrict you, but something to support your practice. So it's interesting. And this is one of the things I appreciate about Zen practice is that there's a lot of emphasis on forms, right? That when you come to your cushion, you bow, and you bow in a very particular way, right? That your hands are one hand's width away from your nose, and that you're not too tight, not too loose, just right, and that you bow to your cushion. You turn clockwise, you bow away, and then you sit, and again, there's a lot of rules. And I was remembering that the night before these 7-day sittings, there's actually a meeting in which the rules are read. And I looked up, and I'm not going to read them all, but I thought it was just to give you an idea. One of the things that's in the rules: if someone in your room is snoring loudly and disturbing you, it is all right to gently have them turn over onto their side. Since snoring is often caused by sleeping on the back, this could alleviate the problem. Take care with closing and opening doors, your bedroom door as well as the bathroom door and fire doors. It is possible to move through the building almost completely silently. Anyhow, they go on and on. It always I can remember that I try and take these things seriously and not to laugh while they're reading the rules, but there's often a good deal of laughter. So they're both kind of the rules for sitting, and there's something about not taking them to, at least what to do if someone is snoring. It's interesting that the rules that are read. And he goes on to say in this chapter, there are various ways to practice: following the breath, counting the breath, or koan practice. This time I recommend following the breath. If you find it, or when you find it difficult to follow the breath, then counting the breath will be a help. Then you will know exactly what you are doing. Right? So there are various ways to practice following the breath, counting the breath, or koan practice. So these really are the kind of the three main meditation instructions that he's talking about. That either we're following the breath, right? So we can just stay with the breath, keep coming back to the breath, or you can count the breath, right? Counting exhales, and which I describe as the beginning and advanced practice, right? That there's never a time that I'm aware of when following the breath and counting the breath aren't useful, acceptable, important practices. And as I was saying while we were sitting, you can always come back to one. Always come back to counting and counting one. And I really appreciate when he says, right, that the reason we do this is then you will know exactly what you are doing. Right? So even if it's distraction after distraction, thought after thought, you will know that you are at least you're there, right? You're not completely following our monkey mind, our distracted mind. And I love the I haven't read it in a while, and I'm not going to read it tonight. There's an essay about how many finger snaps there are in a moment, and the suggestion that for 24 hours that you just keep snapping your fingers as a way of knowing, at least you'll know exactly what you were doing every moment of the day. And I want to end by reading a poem by Hafez called Deepening the Wonder. And he says, death is a favor to us, but our scales have lost their balance. The impermanence of the body should give us great clarity. deepening the wonder in our senses and eyes of this mysterious existence we share and are surely just traveling through. Death is a favor to us, but our minds have lost their balance. The miraculous existence and impermanence of form always makes the illumined ones laugh and sing. Death is a favor to us, but our minds have lost their balance. The miraculous existence and impermanence of form always makes the illumined ones laugh and sing. Yeah, so I thought that was a great poem about being more present, not only for death, but for our not getting caught by um, life and death and cutting through. In a way, I think this practice of opening our intuition is about not getting caught by our own greed, hate, and delusion, and seeing through different eyes. And as he says earlier, getting in touch with the bottom of our hearts.